Hello everyone and welcome back to the Knowledge. We have had a couple of weeks just chilling, Finlay and I, trying to give ourselves a bit of time back. For me, it's been summer holidays have just begun and trying to get my head around the new guidance we've been given from the government. Finn, how are you doing, mate? How have you been this last couple of weeks? Just spending some time with yourself and gathering your thoughts during this madness that we're living in?
Yeah, good. I'm good, thanks. Enjoying getting out a little bit more and been in the sea quite a bit, which has been nice. It's been cold, but it's been good to be doing a little bit more swimming and things like that. So yeah, just been enjoying things.
Good man, and I see you're also sporting a new hairdo as well. It's going for the slick back look. I like it.
Slick back. It's getting more slick back. Saying I'm gonna do a mullet if we get to race this year. So that's my promise.
What's that looking like at your end, kind of racing wise? Is there going to be any potential for anything, you think?
Yeah, it's looking highly likely that we might get to race at the end of September. So that's pretty exciting. I think there's a couple of events which are working pretty hard to hold a sort of waved event, and try and do as much as possible to create a style of social distancing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also for our part in cycling, there was actually the first open time trial was held just last night down south. So I think slowly we're going to start creeping into certain disciplines within cycling, ones which aren't as packed or bunched up. So fingers crossed, this is us getting out of this bit just now, but I just need to keep our eyes on stuff. So this week, our first week back after a couple of weeks, I'm going to talk about our training methodology and why it's important to understand what we think of when we're creating a training program, but also how important it is to also listen to your body and understand the feedback that your body's giving you. Because we had a slight joke before we began recording, is that if you only trained when your body felt good, I think I would have probably only done about 10 sessions in the last 20 years. So it's important to know when we have got certain feedback loops and understanding those feedback loops, but also understanding what they're trying to tell us as well, because feelings and emotion right now, when we're stuck in this kind of insulated world where everything's almost, the smaller things are way more magnified, it can be really hard to work out where you're at. And data's great and it's brilliant, but ultimately it's the combination of how you are as a person, what's going on in your day, as well as what's actually in that training program. So we're going to talk about kind of how we go about planning these things. So I started for 10. Training usually looks for us around about 3 to 4 weeks of slow progressive overload. And then we usually have like a week or so resting. And I don't know about you, Finn, but anytime I put a rest week in for people, they really, really struggle with it because they're not really too sure what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. And generally they feel a bit meh. Would that make sense?
Yeah, you hear a lot of comments like, oh, my legs feel heavy after doing nothing for the day, or I just feel lethargic and fatigued, and that they're all pretty common things. And that's where it can get a bit confusing, because when you associate rest, you think, oh, it's going to make me feel better, and that's where it's a bit, you kind of need to look past those acute things, those acute responses at times, because if you've been doing a big load, that's quite normal to then get these emotions where you feel like you should be doing more, but actually that's your body resetting itself. But that's the challenge, is trying to balance those emotions with what's actually good for you.
You also find that resting, whether it's a week of rest or a rest day, it's actually a bit of a skill to acquire over time. And some people are really good at it. Some people really, really struggle. And as for instance, I had an athlete who was on a rest week last week and decided to do a full marathon trail run. So
I saw that.
They shall remain nameless. But it's one of those things where it's very much a skill, as I've said. And also remembering that the reason why you probably feel fatigued is because your body's going, oh, your body loves what you give to it, whether it's routine or training. If you give it rest, it's something going to go, whoa, this is brilliant. We're not doing that stuff anymore. So it will fall asleep a little bit, but you've also going to have that concurrent overload of all the training that you've done in the previous block, which, like it or lump it, you can't keep training and training and training and training. And although sometimes in some of the way in which I schedule workouts, for the people who are not maybe that good at resting, I kind of sneak in a rest week without them really noticing. So you reduce the volume, reduce the intensity, but they're still doing stuff. And you learn that through the relationship with coaching people. But the other thing we've got to also think about here is that the way in which we would load as for instance, a week. For me, a week usually would begin with Monday a rest day, Friday a rest day, have a 3-day block in the middle, use your Monday to recover from your weekend and your Friday to recover for your weekend coming. That would usually, from my point of view, from my kind of the way in which I do things, I like to work quite concurrently in the way in which I periodize things, which means that we work on everything most days. So you obviously want to make sure that you're not getting into a massive hole and expecting your body to do the repeated amount of intervals on like the third day that it can do on the first day, because the overload totally changes. The way I look at it is that if we look at the neural system and how your central nervous system reacts to training, is that I like to do the short, sharp intervals at the start of the block. So you're fresh, your brain and your muscles can talk to each other pretty well, because it's usually the first day. The first set might feel a bit meh, but you'll usually come into it. The next day we'd be probably looking at working something maybe VO2, potentially threshold. And then the third day would be like maybe a strength day, working on like torque on the bike, or going down simple route of it could be a sweet spot session, or literally go ride your bike and just get an endurance day in, and then have a day off. And then the weekend, depending where you are, could be literally just go ride your bike with your mates, enjoy it, switch your head off, get out in the trails if you're a mountain biker or a cross rider or a gravel rider. Or we have one day like that, and the other day we have some kind of structure in there. And again, that depends very much where you are in a block of training. We're at that point now where there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and we have to now kind of revisit and start bringing in those kind of race ready efforts now. So there's a few people in systems that are in a bit of shock this week and the last week with stuff like that coming in. How does that sit with kind of your kind of training methodology as well, Finn?
Well, it's again similar ideas. The challenge with triathlon is obviously you've got 3 sports that we're trying to balance and juggle, and that is where it's difficult, because it depends what block somebody's in, but typically we're doing sort of 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and I'll try and work people through different phases, where the first sort of block we will very much look at trying to raise, do a bit more speed work. We'll move into the next block where it's trying to become stronger at those speeds. So we're increasing the reps, and then we're into almost an endurance block where it's starting to develop more maybe race specific duration and intensity. So as somebody's building up then to a race, we then would build that endurance block into like an actual race prep. And what I try and do with the training is I do try and use a lot of the sort of sessions as active recovery. So I try and limit the bike and the run to sort of 1 hard session per week, because actually it doesn't take that much to load the body and stimulate the body and get stronger from it. And again, that's something I see is athletes seem to always want to do more, but then they can't hit the numbers if they do more. And one quote that always sort of resonates with me is that training just gives us the potential to get stronger. It's that potential is realized when we recover.
Yeah.
And you have to absorb the load. So something I do try and practice more and more, and it depends on the athlete, but what I find works really well for people is following a hard session with a recovery day or an active recovery day. My fear sometimes with an athlete is if I tell them to go easy, they don't go easy enough. And then that session, rather than actually being recovery, becomes a load on the body. And one really sort of key thing that if people can understand, that when they're going out and doing a recovery session, they're gaining no fitness in that session, in terms of we're not trying to make the body, training works where you cause stress and then you adapt to that stress. So that is designed to help you adapt to it. So if you go out and you do it too hard, you're going to lose that ability to recover. So that's why sometimes I try and put those full recovery days in. I'm almost trying to force somebody to not do anything. But if they can go out and go easy and really easy, then that can be very beneficial, to just do a really, really low intensity, easy session to keep some enzyme activity ticking over and keeping, and if it's used correctly, it can gradually, very gradually over time, add to that overall endurance load and keep building somebody's fitness if they can do it. But it's if they, if that creeps too much the wrong way, that's when over time it'll just hit them like a wall, and you end up with them just feeling like they've done too much. But it is very much, again, that structure of trying to get somebody to build, and that's sometimes the fear as well. Somebody goes into their first week of a block and they're maybe feeling fresher after the recovery week, so they'll go all out and they'll sort of hit those sessions that little bit harder, but they don't remember that fatigue from that session probably isn't going to actually really hit their body for even, could be 2-3 weeks till you get those adaptations from those sessions. So this is where the consistency comes in, and really looking at the bigger picture, because no single session is going to make you like better or stronger. It's a cumulative effect of being consistently good and doing the right things for a long time. So,
yeah, absolutely right there. And a prime example of that is if you were to do like a big sweet spot block where you're doing maybe, I don't know, anywhere between 7 to 10 hours of raw sweet spot work. After about 3 weeks, you're kind of looking back 2 weeks before and going, I should never have just clicked an extra 5-10% on Zwift or on Trainer Road, because it's absolutely biting me in the butt here. But the other thing you've hit on there is that rest days and active rest especially should be an opportunity for you just to switch off. Put your headphones in, listen to a podcast, do it indoors, whatever you want to do. But one thing I was always taught by my previous coaches was that a rest day should be, if you're on your bike, it should be a day where you're riding just fast enough to balance. You shouldn't be having to go quick. You shouldn't be trying to race people off sets of lights. Let people pass you. Just swallow your pride and just chill out. But it's also a great opportunity for you to use to work on skills as well. So if you're a mountain biker, it's a great chance for you to maybe session a few little sections close to you, or maybe go to your local trail centre and just do a little bit of different stuff, some fun stuff. That's always a good use of that. But the only issue you have with that is that there's a little bit more, thought process put into your day rather than just being a purely a chilled rest day. But I find that's a nice way of especially off-road riders, that they can actually use that to work on skill with it. And then there's always a continual growth within them, whether it's, when you're resting and you're fresh, you generally pay more attention to stuff. If you ask them to do a skill day 3 days into a week block, they're generally pretty fatigued. And if you can get that in middle of the block, give them a chance to really focus on skills. Same with, another thing I used to do on my rest days, I used to ride my TT bike and just get my position and just ride it really, really slowly. So that's another great way of using those rest or active recovery days in a positive way, and not using it all about physical ability and trying to push yourself, because that's not the aim of the game. Not at all. So that then leads on to, we spoke about how, just a moment ago, how we would kind of, the way in which I describe it is that you go hard and fast at the start, and then you slowly prolong the duration and reduce the intensity throughout that block. One thing a lot of people come back to me with is CTL. So on Training Peaks, you've got a graph, and that graph is basically a blue line, which shows you how fit you're getting. That graph is worked off a thing called training stress score, and people think it's the be all and end all. But I've seen a lot of athletes who have had CTLs of, say, 70, maybe not even anywhere near 100, which is kind of like a gold standard by people's kind of thought process. And they're winning bike races and they're being very competitive, internationally. And it just shows that all TSS is by no means, it's not the same at all. 100 TSS could be a 2-hour steady state ride. Mm-hmm. It could be an absolutely hellish 1 hour and 50 minutes on Zwift or on your turbo, or out in your trainers, out in the trails. So it's not always about that TSS, because it is not created equally. What we're trying to do as coaches is do two things. We're trying to work energy systems, which are everything from phosphocreatines all the way through fat adaptation, VO2 max, threshold, all these things. And there's different components, and they're very much like dimmer switches, trying to work out between all those different phases in our training and what we're doing, depending on where we are in that block and how close we have to our bigger A priority events, is making sure that we're working on them and that we're keeping them topped up and trying to slowly keep on pushing them up as and when we can. For a lot of those, it's also about getting the repeatability of it. So it's not always going to be 400 watts for 30 seconds, off for 10 seconds, back on. You're going to change that frequency. You're going to go 400 watts for a minute, 2 minutes off, 50 seconds, 10 seconds off. So just as an example, so you play about with that frequency all the way through and trying to keep it fresh and not get too kind of, oh, we've all had those sessions where we're going, oh, I hate this session. I just don't want to be doing this. But we know that it's probably the best thing we can probably do for ourselves. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the, you know, the TSS stuff is so interesting as well, where it's like, you know, you look at a number and it's all relative to what you've done in the past. You know, Chris Froome could have a CTL of 100 and somebody else could have a CTL of 150. That doesn't mean you're going to beat Chris Froome up a mountain.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's relative to what you're doing. And then, yeah, it's really, I think it's, you know, it's very easy to get bogged down in the numbers and get too, you know, it's using it in the right way where everyone's a bit different there in terms of what those numbers mean to them. And it's actually incredibly easy to create a program where you could progressively load somebody's TSS and create a really nice smooth line that moves up and it looks really nice that they're building up. But actually, that might not be training them in the right way, because as coaches, what we're doing is we're looking at what somebody's doing each week, how they're responding to stuff, what's right. And it's almost at times, you know, somebody asks me how many hours am I doing or how many kilometers am I meant to run this week. Sometimes I actually have no idea because I'm so engrossed in what I want the person to be achieving with each session, because it's more about, you know, looking at each session in isolation, having an aim and a preparation, because it's consistently doing all those little things right, which will accumulate to what the ultimate goal is, whether that's achieving a certain time in a race or achieving a personal goal or hitting a certain target. Ticking X, Y, and Z in terms of doing X amount of hours and X amount of miles is, you know, it's pointless. And that's where also the numbers can get people down as well. They might look at the form score and think that they're maybe too fatigued or they're too under fatigued. That's where it's all about looking at your, you know, understanding how you're feeling and tapping into, you know, what's right for you, because and learning what your body needs. Because as you're talking earlier about and saying there with, you know, those sessions when we actually don't feel that great, should we do them or should we not, is a question that gets asked a lot. But it's actually when your legs are tired, we're purposely putting in sessions to be done when you're fatigued and you're under load, because that's what makes you strong. You know, when you're at the end of a race and you're under fatigue, you know, whether that's a marathon, a long bike race or a sprint, you know, especially in longer events where, you know, it's muscular tendon structures that are, you know, muscle damage sends stuff to our brain which slows us down and causes fatigue. So if we can train our bodies to be stronger in those conditions, and that's where mental resilience again is something which is kind of forgotten about in sport, but it's such a huge factor of what's trained as you build up. But these sessions where we might not feel 100%, but if you can get out there and do them in the right way and remember what the focus of the session is, that's where you will achieve some really good things with that.
Yeah, I used to have a few sessions that I would do myself, and I used them quite a lot with athletes, especially when they're in that kind of race preparation kind of phase. It's sort of I call it like a layered or a varied session where you'll have 3 hours, but you'll do a lot of different intervals in it. And basically what that's got to do is simulate what you're going to be doing in your racing, because it's really difficult to simulate racing unless you've got somebody who can motor pace you, or you've got access to a really good chain gang where you can kind of ride it at the time that you need on the day that you need to train on. So that would involve like a lot of stuff, like you would do a big sweep, some sprints to start off to simulate the race start, and then you do like a steady state block, and then you go into sort of short sharp efforts towards the end, and then at the end literally you're doing like 1 minute on, 1 minute off, because that's exactly what's going to happen in a bike race. You're trying to break the race into the different sections, and of course that's purely for a road race. When it comes to other events like cyclocross or mountain biking, it's more about that repeatability for that hour and a half or the hour, be able to go on and off, on and off, on and off. Whereas when you're in a road race, or even like a time trial, as a for instance, it's very much a about having those tools to use your power at the right time, be able to hide and know that you in training that you've actually done these things, and you know that you're capable of producing the TSS or the calorie consumption that you're going to need during that race. But more importantly, it's also about making sure that we're again ticking the boxes for all those energy systems that are going to be required when you've got that number on your bars or on your back. And that's the most important part of this, is that we're trying to prepare people for, I'm not going to say worst case scenario, but we're trying to get you ready for battle. Ultimately, we're trying to give you as many tools, we're kind of train you as much as we can, so that nobody can throw something at you and you can't dodge it, or nobody's going to lean on you and you can't push back. And that's the really important part of what we're trying to do. The one thing that I have noticed, and I personally struggle with this as well, I coach myself, so it's quite hard for me to give my coach, I'm to moan to my coach, well, you're training me too hard, so I need to take that on the chin. But right now, we're at this now, this is all, if you come across this years later, this is all during lockdown, and everyone knows what lockdown is now. Everyone knows what COVID-19 is. And right now, we've had a combination of people who have been very, very positive straight from the get-go, straight in there, really structured. And now they're kind of struggling. And now they're kind of like, oh, and vice versa. We've had people who were totally the opposite, really, really struggling at the start. And now they're kind of getting it. And they're like, oh, right, okay, I know why I'm doing this. And the one thing I'm trying to get here is that the combination of you and your coach should be very much a constant conversation. We're not the kind of, I'm not the kind of coach that just says one email a week and I'll talk to you about your training and try and put something personal in that email so it feels like I'm just talking to you and it's not a blanket email I'm sending out to people. We actually want to be in touch with people as often as possible. If they've got problems, if things need to change, if we need to take the session from 3 hours down to 1 hour, how can we work the magic in the background to make it still elicit that response, but also make them understand that you're not in this on your own. We're here to help you, and we're here to really, really make sure that you understand that this isn't something that we're doing to you, and you're not doing it to yourself. We're doing this with you as a partnership, and we just want to make sure that you guys are getting exactly what you want from your training, so that when it comes to your events or your challenges or your fitness aim, we've been there to stand beside you and make sure that you can fulfill it as much as possible. There are going to be days when the discipline is going to be out the window and you're knackered because your wee one's been up all night. And that is exactly why you need a coach who's there, not at your beck and call 24/7, but relatively speaking, when I was an athlete, I just wanted an answer. I'm feeling tired today, hardly slept last night, should I train? And generally the answer was no, or go out and give it a try. Give it a try the first effort. If it's okay, try the second one. If that goes all right, well, keep on trying. The most important thing for me is that it's not always about the execution, it's about the process of actually getting up, getting it done. But there is going to be those days where you're just literally, the moment that you wake up that, oh man, I am absolutely in the box. And I guess it goes kind of against what we said a few minutes ago, but these are the extreme situations that we're talking about now. If everyone kind of, the amount of days that I had perfect legs were counted in one hand, and the biggest thing we've got with sport and what we do within triathlon and cycling specifically and running is that we are constantly sore. And then the days that we don't feel sore, we hurt ourselves even more than we were when we're sore. So it's a funny mentality you're dealing with. It's just, you have this sort of crazy thought process in your head, even in a race situation when the person at the front is nailing it and you're the person at the back. Well, it's the same effort. It's just the person at the front's the person deciding. You're at the back at the mercy of it. So it's ultimately the same things happening to both people from a physiological point of view, but obviously the environment in which you're operating, whether that's your domestic environment, your social environment, or generally just how things are right now. It's okay to have those days and understand that we are here as your coaches to help support you, because everyone needs support in different ways. Some people just need a wee message every now and then. Some people, you'll send a small text and you'll get a big essay back, but that's great, because as coaches, I think we understand that we are there as a support mechanism for the people that we work with. And it's been great to have them as well. Everyone's stuck by us throughout this, and it's been really inspiring for me to see people really, really dial in and reach out for help as well when it's been really, really needed. And that's happening more than a lot of people expect. And I think right now, if there was one thing to come out of this, on those days where you are feeling I feel a bit shit, I don't want to do this. Remember why you are doing this stuff. You're doing it, and the most important thing right now is physical and mental health. And exercise gives you both of them. It helps that to no end. And I myself, I've said it many times before, having a bad day, jump on the mountain bike, put on the trail shoes, go hide in the woods for half an hour, 20 minutes, and you feel like a brand new person. So I don't know about you, but you've probably been experiencing a wee bit of ups and downs with athletes as well.
Yeah, I think we all face similar things, and I don't think there's I know we're always as positive as we can be, but it's I think it's also good to also say how it is sometimes. And there's actually, I'm not going to lie, there's been some situations where I've actually felt, it sounds ridiculous, but almost like helpless as a coach in some situations where races have been postponed or things have been cancelled, or some really unfortunate things with some injuries have happened, and then that takes away the thing that makes somebody feel happy, and they can't, I'm sure the same to me, where we absolutely thrive on when somebody's doing well and they're getting out of what they put into it. And it's so hard if somebody isn't getting out what they deserve or what they're putting into it. And there's situations where things that just are out of their control go against them. And this has been particularly challenging, this situation where there are just things where it's like, how bad can it get on some days? But then there it sounds so cliche, but there's always that light at the end of the tunnel, and every person can get to that point where it, you start to come through the other side again, and it's always there's always a solution. And I can't help but think there's so many situations when that is just getting out and doing some easy training as well, that's for your mental state, because everyone faces trauma and everyone faces sort of difficult situations, and it's amazing how many people turn to sport in those situations or those difficult times and reap the rewards from it in terms of feeling better and being able to sort of cope with the challenge of the situation. And a lot of athletes have worked sort of in very different ways over the last couple of months to try and find different ways of overcoming a problem. And I think people are going to come out of this at some point, and they will always have those skills and those sort of tools that they've built up from it too. I mean, there has been some interesting stuff being touched on, how athletes were almost in the best situation possible to deal with the situation we've been in, because they're so mentally resilient. And some people might not realize, what's happening at the moment, but they're slowly going to get that accumulative effect of being challenged and then overcoming it. And it is just, like you say, it is about communicating and talk. Something that you always say is it's much easier to put out a match than it is I might be paraphrasing. Yeah.
It's you work with two kind of things, a candle and a bonfire.
Yeah. So I love that. And I say that to a lot of people, because if you feel something and something's not quite right, share it and speak about it. And this is where feedback is so important. Like if I log into Training Week Peaks and have a look at something and I see 4 or 5 workouts with no comment on it, it's like, well, what, that becomes difficult. And that's why when you get a text from me saying, how are you doing? Like, how have things gone this week? That's because there's no feedback in Training Peaks. So feedback is unbelievably important, because if you highlight how you're feeling and what is going on, you can manage that and find a solution much faster than suddenly going, I don't know what to do. And then you look back on things and it's like, well, actually, where did things not go quite right? Or was the training wrong? Should you have done an easy day that day? Should you have rested? Should you have actually just gone out and trained hard? It's all these factors, because I think it's really interesting. I don't know if you find it, but I pick up so many trends in how people speak. And when they're writing feedback, you can tell how tired they are, or how the session's gone without them necessarily saying that, just from their tone and some of the language you've used. And it's probably a very subconscious thing people are doing, but this is where you can pick up so much from feedback in terms of, oh, that, you know, they got through that session, but actually they just got through it. And it wasn't the same as last week where it felt maybe really good. So actually next week we need to change something there in that session, or we need to change something in the coming days, or did they prepare right for that session as well? Because that's, again, a huge factor is, yeah, what have they done before that? But yeah, feedback is just can't stress how important that is, and, you know, that is to keeping the communication going.
Yeah, I would also say to any of our athletes that work with us just now who are watching this, that irrespective of where you're at just now, you've done a great job. You've done brilliantly. You've survived through one of the most testing times that our generation's ever going to see. And we're still not out of the woods yet. We have got those glimmers of hope, but whatever you've done to this point's worked. So just keep doing what you're doing, and we're here to help you guys. It's very much a partnership here, and we want to make sure that you get what you need from us, at the same time getting what you want from your sport. And that's a really, really important message to get out there, because it's not always about data. A lot of it's about that person and being personable and having the comfort to talk to your coach about things that, you know, you maybe can't speak to, like your significant other half, or it's maybe something at work's pissing you off and you can't talk to your boss about it, or something like that. It's just nice to share. And I had a conversation just the other day with somebody who was the exact same, and it was just about taking them out of the situation and going, right, so you're working at your desk all day, you're working there probably more than you've ever worked. Why didn't you start putting alarms on your phone to get up, go out, walk around the block, come back, actually leave your desk? Because if anyone's like I would expect, there's people spending like 10, 15 hours just sitting at the computer because they can. Mm-hmm. And there's none of the usual external stuff telling them, all right, okay, it's time for you to, you know, it's tea break time, or it's time to go to the loo, or time to time to skive, because there's none of those normal feedback loops, or those, you know, those mental logs that you go, oh, it's 2:00, it's time for me to have a cup of tea or whatever, you know. So from that point of view, even just having that conversation with them really, really helped loads. And I'm glad that they got back to say that was really, thanks for your time to just chat about that, because I think, yeah, that it's tough, but just remember whatever you're doing right now, and the fact that we are still here talking to you guys, and we've been really, really lucky that every single one of our clients has stuck by us. Thank you for that, because that means a lot to us, because it keeps on giving us purpose. And right now, my purpose right now is I've started designing a lot more new sessions, and I've been trying a lot of stuff to experiment on myself. So get ready for some new sessions, guys, in the next few weeks. But no, it's a great conversation to have, and it's definitely one that would probably, you know, we could be here talking hours about. And I'm sure from what we spoke about already, there's lots of wee nuggets in there for people to take away. But again, without trying to extend this conversation longer than it needs to be and stop going on another tangent, what else do you want to talk about, Finn, when it comes to actually the way in which we coach people? Is there anything else you need to add?
No, I think hopefully that gives a really good insight in terms of like how we approach things and our methodology and our style. And it's a very collaborative process, and it's really we're doing it together, and I'm sure everyone realizes how invested we are in the success of every athlete as they are, and it's just I think it's just good to know that you've got somebody there, like that's there as we're a support system. That's what we are. So
yeah, and that was always what Meta was founded on. It was always founded on having like-minded coaches with similar work ethic and methodology, and having the right people in place. We've got Carol, who can look after the body. We had Morgan Lloyd to work with us for ages in bike fit and physiotherapy. We've now got Jack working with us as well now, and it's great. I like the fact that we can all reach out to each other and we can all help each other, and where none of us are scared or too proud to go, I've got this athlete, what do you think we could do that would maybe help? And the fact that we can do that within our group of coaches, it's, for me, I'm immensely proud of that. So it's great to still be able to have that little group, and obviously we're growing that group as well. But no, I think we've touched on quite a lot of stuff, and we can't give everything away, obviously, because that would be kind of detrimental to what we do. But if anyone does have any questions or any comments, please do feel free to leave them below in the comment section. And if you want to get in touch with us, just pop onto whatsyourmeta.com. We've got contact forms on there. If you need to know anything about human body, little irks you've got with your body, we've got Carol who can help you with that. She's doing a lot of stuff remotely. Finn, obviously, for the triathlon and running stuff, myself for the bike stuff, and Jack for the S&C stuff. So we've got a nice wee team here to help support you guys, and we're here and dedicated to continually support our little meta community. So for this week's knowledge, I think that's us. Finn, thank you once again, mate, for your time. I look forward to seeing what that hair's doing next week. And I can't really talk, mine's just getting a bit out of control as well. But
that's good. That's good.
Queue for 2 hours outside the barber's just to get my haircut. But yeah, thanks again for your time, mate. And everyone, we will see you once again in the coming days with another bit of content from the Watch Your Meta team. So thanks again and have a great weekend.